Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope all of you are okay and safe. Last time we were talking about different types of tissues of human body, and we studied epithelial tissues. The next topic would be connective tissue, and then muscle and nervous tissue. Okay, so first of all, a little preview of the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue basically covers the innermost lining of the organs and the outer layer of the skin. The basic principle of the epithelial tissue, or the basic purpose of the epithelial tissue, is to protect the underlying organs from the harsh environment, from wear and tear, or from the external factors, such as in case of mouth, in case of esophagus, stomach, intestines. They protect those from the wear and tear caused by ingestion of food. In case of skin, they protect against the harsh environmental conditions. So epithelial tissues have that purpose or that function. The next topic, the one we are going to study today, is connective tissue. So a connective tissue is a basic component of body cell, and the cells join together to form tissues. So connective cells join together to form tissues. There are different types of connective tissues that we are going to study further in this lecture. The connective tissues are predominantly composed of two different parts. First is intercellular material, and the second is extracellular matrix. Okay, so you need to understand it clearly. Intercellular material is the substances which are present within the cell, whereas extracellular matrix are those substances which are present between two different cells. So let me clarify it. Cell is a single entity with a particular structure, a cell membrane, nucleus, and all the organelles which are in between. Whereas extracellular matrix occurs outside the cell membrane between two different cells. So if we see here, this red circular substance is a cell, whereas the whitest substance present between the cell is extracellular matrix. This is a cell, contains intracellular matrix, intercellular substance, and all the white part is extracellular matrix. Okay, so let's proceed from here. The cells are usually widely separated by the extracellular matrix, which is composed of fibrous proteins and a relatively amorphous ground substance. What is the amorphous ground substance? A substance which does not have a clear shape. It is just like a jelly with ground substances. What is ground? पिसा हुआ समझते हैं ना, पिसा हुआ जैसे कीमा होता है, उस तरह से छोटे छोटे जर्रे होते हैं इसके अंदर. So it doesn't have any particular shape or size. So many of the special properties of the connective tissue are determined by the composition of this matrix, and the classification is also largely based on the characteristics of extracellular matrix. In some types of connective tissue, the cellular component eventually dominates the tissue, even though the tissue originally has a high matrix to cell ratio. Okay, so let me explain it a bit. Normally, the extracellular matrix is in larger proportion as compared to the intercellular substance. But in some tissues, such as fat cells, when we keep on ingesting too much fat, the extracellular matrix gets lower in concentration, and the tissue expands to a big size. So the intercellular substance becomes more in proportion as compared to extracellular matrix. As you can see here, extracellular matrix predominates, whereas the intercellular substance is lower. Whereas in this adipose tissue, you can see the lining, which is cell membrane, and inside the cell membrane the cell is clear because it contains adipose fat. Looks like transparent structures on a microscope. So here these whitish parts are fat-filled fat cells, adipose tissue, and this is extracellular matrix. This brownish substance is extracellular matrix. All of these are fat cells. So the proportions may change from a greater concentration of extracellular matrix to lower concentration of extracellular matrix in some tissues. Okay, let's go ahead. So connective tissues are the basic supporting tissues of the body. Their basic purpose is to support the body, whereas the basic purpose of epithelial tissues were to protect the body. So these are supporting tissues of the body which are derived from embryonic mesoderm and composed of cells. Here again I am going to compare it with epithelial cells. Epithelial cells may be derived from endoderm or mesoderm or ectoderm, based on the organ which it covers. So all of the connective tissues are derived from mesoderm. You must remember it. It is a very important question of embryology. So these are derived from mesoderm and are composed of cells, fibers, and amorphous ground substance. What are the characteristics of connective tissue? These are the supporting tissues which support and form the framework of the body. Like bone is a good example of connective tissue. Blood is a good example of connective tissue. So these are supporting and framework making tissues of the body. They consist of cells, fibers, and amorphous ground substance, as we discussed earlier. The cells are widely scattered and separated from each other with extracellular matrix in between the cells. They are developed from mesoderm, except the connective tissues of nervous system known as microglia. Those are not derived from mesoderm, and they have both nerve and blood supply except the cartilage type of connective tissues. So epithelial tissues did not have any kind of blood supply, whereas connective tissues have both the nerve as well as blood supply. Okay, let's move on to classification of connective tissues. Connective tissues can be generally classified into two types: embryonic and adult. Embryonic connective tissues are those specialized connective tissues which are present in an embryo, in a developing fetus inside the mother's uterus. So they can be further divided into mesenchymal and mucoid. What are mesenchymal tissues? Mesenchymal tissues, examples given here are angioblasts. Angioblasts are those tissues. Remember the term blast. Blast means premature tissue which is going to form a mature tissue or cell. Blast is the premature form, whereas cyte is the mature form. So angioblast forms angiocyte, like that. Angioblast forms arteries and veins and all of the circulatory system structures. Chondroblast changes into chondrocyte in the adult form and forms cartilage. Osteoblast changes into bone. Myoblast changes into myocyte or muscle cells. These are restricted to embryo and fetus. Whenever a person is delivered from the uterus, when the cells are mature, the names of these change, like angiocyte, chondrocyte, osteocyte, myocyte. Okay, another type of embryonic connective tissue is mucoid tissue. Mucoid connective tissue, the example is Wharton's jelly. Wharton's jelly is a substance that is present in umbilical cord of the baby, and which helps it in delivering the proper nutrition to the baby. Now let's discuss adult connective tissue. Adult connective tissue is further divided into 4 or 5 types. First is connective tissue proper. So connective tissue proper has further subtypes such as loose areolar tissue. Loose areolar tissue is example given is superficial fascia and submucosal layer. So superficial fascia is the layer that is present just beneath the epithelial layer, and submucosal layer is the layer that is present beneath the mucosal layer of stomach and intestines. The second one is dense collagen tissue that forms tendon and dermis of the skin. Remember, epidermis is epithelial in nature, whereas dermis is connective tissue in nature or collagen tissue in nature. What are tendons? Tendons are extensions of muscles which help them grab onto bones or remain attached to different bones. So there's that. The third subtype in connective tissue proper is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue means fat tissue that makes up subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is present in skin beneath the dermis, and the adipose tissue of mesentery and omentum that stores fat. What is mesentery? What is omentum? Omentum is a kind of a layer that covers all of our internal organs of the abdomen. It covers the stomach, intestines, gallbladder, everything. It covers in a layer-like fashion. That structure is known as omentum. And mesentery is a similar term to omentum. Omentum forms meshes with rich blood supply in between, that is mesentery, that is present near the intestines mostly. Okay, so another type is elastic tissue. Elastic tissue is ligamentum flammum and ligamentum nuchae. I'll explain it in detail in the group later on along with the pictures. There is reticular tissue, that is bone marrow and lymphoid tissue that helps in production of different type of blood cells. And there is pigmented tissue such as choroid and iris of the eye that has special type of pigmentation in it, has different colors. Okay, the second major type of adult connective tissue is cartilage. What is cartilage? But let me explain it in simpler words. Whenever there are two long bones or two simple bones and they are going to attach with each other, we need a buffer or some slippery surface which covers the edges of the bones so that the bones do not rub against each other. कभी चिकन वगैरह खाया आपने? ऑब्वियसली खाया होगा. चिकन का अगर आप लेग पीस पकड़ें तो लेग पीस के ऊपर वो हड्डी सी होती है, नरम सी, वाइट कलर की, जो तोड़ें तो टूट जाती है. दैट इज़ कार्टिलेज. दैट हेल्प्स इन forming the joints between different bones, and that forms different other structures too, such as our nose or ear, things like that. So cartilage is of three types. There is hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage. Hyaline cartilage, the example given here of hyaline cartilage is trachea. Trachea is the windpipe through which we breathe in the air. Fibrocartilage is a type that forms intervertebral discs. Vertebra are present on the back. As I explained to you earlier, there are 33 vertebrae in the back that contain the spinal cord, and in between those vertebrae, where those vertebrae are attached to each other, there is a thin disc that is known as intervertebral disc, that is composed of fibrocartilage. Elastic cartilage is another type that forms a ear. The next type of connective tissue is bone. Bone may be of two subtypes. There may be cancellous bone, there may be compact bone. What is cancellous bone, what is compact bone, we'll study it further down in the slide. So cancellous bone, the examples given are ribs and vertebrae, whereas compact bones are long bones. Another type of connective tissue is blood, and the last type is neuroglia or neuroglia. These are the connective tissues which are present in nervous system, in central nervous system. So let's talk about the role of connective tissue. Connective tissue have several essential roles in the body. These may be subdivided into these roles. There may be structural connective tissues, such as ordinary type, which are widely distributed within the body, as we've discussed earlier, that contains the adipose tissue, and that contains the loose areolar tissue, elastic tissue, reticular tissue. Those kind of come under the umbrella of ordinary, whereas special skeletal type tissues which serve the function of maintaining our skeleton are cartilage and bone. Hemolymphoid tissues are those tissues which either make blood cells or are blood cells. So these are peripheral blood cells, such as WBCs, RBCs, things like that. Lymphoid tissues which are going to translate into lymphatic system, form the lymphatic system, and their precursors, that is bone marrow, that makes the blood. The other type of connective tissue apart from structural connective tissue is defensive connective tissue, in which the cellular component has the dominant role in defense against microorganisms that enter our body, such as mast cells that reside in connective tissues. They fight against different allergens which enter our body. They also play important morphogenetic parts in organizing and influencing the growth and differentiation of surrounding tissues. For example, in the development of glands from an epithelial surface. So, let me explain this a bit. What is morphogenetic? Morphogenetic is anything that is programmed by genes to form different shape or to come into different shape or size, such as when the Glands are being constituted from the cuboidal type of epithelium. These connective tissues help them in forming the glands in that particular shape and size. Functions, again we're going to study the functions of the connective tissue. I've included it multiple times in the slide because these topics are very important and questions tend to be from these kind of topics, especially in PMDC exams and IMC exams. So connective tissues form the structural framework of the body. They bind the structures together and hold them in position, such as in case of cartilage and bones. They protect and support different internal structures and organs. Just like the ribs, they give protection to lungs. Just like that, vertebrae give support to spinal cord. They act as a padding and serve as a pathway for vessels and nerves. Vertebrae serve via their spinal canal for the spinal cord to pass through, and they provide padding to the spinal cord so that any jerky motion or any kind of hit does not affect it, at least of lower intensity hit does not affect the spinal cord. And they have an important role in limiting infections, wound repair and healing via production of white blood cells, natural killer cells, T cells. They have a very important role in limiting the infections from different microorganisms. They have a very important role in wound repair and healing. Okay, different cells of connective tissue. Let's talk about those. So what cells can be found in connective tissue? They can be fibroblasts and fibrocytes. What are fibroblasts and fibrocytes? Have you ever looked at a scar? किसी को भी चोट लगी हो अगर on the hand or on the arm or anywhere else, when it heals, a hard rigid type of blackish colored structure is formed. That is a scar. That is composed of fibrocytes. So it helps in healing, whereas moreover it helps in determining the boundaries of different infections and things. Macrophages or histiocytes are white blood cells which help us fight infections. Fat cells or adipocytes are those cells where the fat deposition takes place in our body. Lymphocytes are white blood cells. Plasma cells are B lymphocytes, are also known as plasma cells. They are also known as sometimes as memory cells. They compile together a memory of all the infections that have taken place in the history of that person. Mast cells are the basic cells which fight against different type of allergens. Reticular cells are those cells which form the blood lines, blood cells. Cartilage cells such as chondroblasts and chondrocytes are those. Chondroblasts are immature cartilage cells, chondrocytes are mature cartilage cells. They form the padding, they form the structure which is present between the joints of different bones. Bone cells, the different types of osteoblast, osteocyte and osteoclast. Okay, bache, blasts are those cells which are not mature or immature. Cytes are those cells which are mature, and clasts are those cells which are going to break down the mature cells. So blasts form the mature cells, clasts break down the mature cells. Osteoblasts are those cells which are going to form mature osteocytes. Osteoclasts are those cells which break down the osteocytes for formation of new bone or for expansion of bone, those kind of things. And for acquiring calcium from the bone. We are going to study it when we will study the parathyroid hormone and parathyroid gland. Okay, blood cells such as red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, megakaryocytes. You know all of these already, so I don't need to explain it. Our red blood cells help in carrying oxygen from the lungs to different sites in the body. White blood cells fight against infections, provide immunity. Platelets are formed from megakaryocytes. They are different chips of megakaryocytes, small parts of megakaryocyte. They help in whenever there is an injury, they help in clotting of the blood. Neuroglial cells are the connective cells which are present in central nervous system. They are further divided into astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglia, ependymal cells, Schwann cells. Okay, so here is a picture. We're going to look at it and let me explain this to you. Okay, bacha. So the journey of a blood cell starts from hematopoietic stem cell or HSSC. Hematopoietic stem cell or pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell is the cell that is present in the bone marrow. They occur from birth up till or death. What do they form? They form different type of blood cells. For example, hematopoietic stem cell forms red blood cell. Red blood cell as well as other types such as basophils, eosinophils, neutrophils, which are types of white blood cells and mast cells. Red blood cell is also known as an erythrocyte. The precursor of that is erythroblast. Okay, and these cells, moreover, they also form megakaryocyte that further gives rise to different platelets, divides and gives rise to platelets. They also form lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes, when they further mature, form B lymphocyte and then they form plasma cells. Monocytes, when monocytes go out of the circulation, they are known as macrophages. There are also some fixed macrophages that are present in particular structures, different structures. We'll discuss it further on down the slide. So macrophages may be fixed, limited to a particular structure, such as histiocyte that is found in lungs, I think. Kupffer cells are macrophages which are fixed to liver. Their function is to destroy the abnormal tissue, to destroy the microbes that enter the body, any bacteria or viruses. Macrophages destroy those. So until unless it is in the common circulation, it is monocyte. When it escapes, it is macrophage. When monocyte travels to different bones and they start absorbing bones, they are known as osteoclasts. Okay, so that was for hematopoietic stem cell. Another type of pluripotent cell is undifferentiated mesenchymal cell. Undifferentiated mesenchymal cell is of mesenchymal origin, forms other cells than the blood cells. They form mesothelial cells which make up mesothelium or the covering of pleura, pericardium. Those are made from mesothelial cells. Endothelial cells make up endothelium or the internal lining of different arteries, veins, vessels. They also form osteoblasts, which are premature bone cells, which are then matured into osteocyte or bone cells. They also form chondroblasts or premature cartilage cells, which mature and form chondrocytes, and they are also responsible for fibroblasts and adipocytes. The adipocytes are fat cells, fibroblasts form fibrocytes. Okay, so as I told you earlier, connective tissue contains intercellular substance and extracellular matrix. That extracellular matrix contains different fibers and amorphous ground substance. Different type of fibers found in connective tissues are collagen fibers, reticular fibers, and elastic fibers. Whereas the ground substance found in connective tissue, or the amorphous gelatinous substance in which the fibers and cells of connective tissue are embedded, is made up of glycosaminoglycans and glycoproteins. Glycosaminoglycans are a specific group of chemicals. 95% of the structure of extracellular matrix is made up of glycosaminoglycans. Different glycosaminoglycans that are used are hyaluronic acid, chondroitin sulfate, dermatan sulfate, keratin sulfate, and heparin sulfate. Whereas the glycoproteins, which make up 5% of the extracellular matrix, are composed of fibronectin, chondronectin, osteonectin, etc. It depends on different type of tissue. Okay, so here we see a picture of a connective tissue. What is it? Let's see. It contains a fibroblast, as well as a fat cell or adipocyte, as well as a mast cell. All of these are different types of connective tissues, and they are occurring at a single site. That explains in itself the importance of connective tissue in our body. Okay, so moreover, there is a lymphocyte there is a macrophage there is a neutrophil there is a plasma cell. All of these are the cells of connective tissue, whereas the amorphous ground substance or extracellular matrix has these components. It has elastic fibers here, elastic fibers. It has reticular fiber, blue in color here. Moreover, it has collagen fiber, from which this fibroblast is attached. Moreover, it has these ground substance. Okay. Okay, so let's get on with cartilage. I think cartilage would be enough for today. So this was an intro of connective tissue. Now we're going to study a specific type of connective tissue, that is cartilage. Cartilage is a type of load bearing connective tissue which bears the load of that is given to the bones, and it has a low metabolic rate. It does not consume too much energy, and its vascular supply is confined to its surface or to large cartilage canals which are present in between the cartilage. Cartilage is covered by a fibrous perichondrium. Remember, chondro is for cartilage, peri is around the cartilage. So perichondrium is a membrane that is present around the cartilage. It is present everywhere around the cartilage except at its junction with the bone and except at a synovial surface. At the synovial surface, the cartilage is lubricated by a nutrient that is known as synovial fluid. So the cartilage, just like any other connective tissue, is made up of two parts: extracellular matrix and specific cells. Extracellular matrix of the cartilage is composed of mucopolysaccharides, elastic fibers and collagen fibers type 2. In the last lecture I explained type 1 collagen is present in bones, type 2 in cartilage, type 4 at basement membrane, type 5 in hair. Okay. So you need to remember that. Okay, so collagen fibers type 2 are present mostly in cartilage except fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is very hard type of cartilage, so that contains type 1 collagen. Just like bone, it is hard in its consistency. It also contains proteoglycans. Proteoglycans are substances which are composed of proteins and carbohydrates. The carbohydrate part of these proteoglycans is glycosaminoglycans, as we saw earlier. Chondroitin sulfate is the main glycosaminoglycan that is present in cartilage, and the protein that makes up cartilage is aggregan. Chondrocyte is a cell of cartilage tissue. The nutrition of cartilage is via blood vessels. Specifically, the fibrocartilage gets its blood via blood vessels. The other two types, the hyaline cartilage and the other type, gets the nutrition from lymphatic system. And hyaline and fibrocartilage get calcified, whereas elastic cartilage does not. This is a structure of cartilage. So what do we see here? We see different collagen fibers that are present here. These are broad collagen fibers. These are thin or small diameter collagen fibers, and they band together to form a structure. How do they form a structure? Just like it's given here. Okay, so there was a term given here, that was, the term was proteoglycan. So what is a proteoglycan? Proteoglycan is a structure on which a central core of protein is present, and from it different glycosaminoglycans are attached. So the structure of cartilage is given here. Just like that, there is a central core of a protein, and these purple things are glycosaminoglycans that are attached on that core. That is the basic structure of a cartilaginous tissue. So it is just like the branch and the leaves of a tree. The core or the branch is made up of proteins, whereas the leaves, the edges of the leaves are made up of glycosaminoglycan. There are three types of cartilage. hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is the cartilage that contains type 2 collagen. It is incapable of repair. It does not repair itself if it is fractured. And the defect is filled with fibrous tissue. That means the working capacity of the cartilage is affected once it's fractured or broken down. Hyaline cartilage is present in the body as costal cartilage. Costal cartilage is that cartilage which attaches ribs to the sternum and the vertebrae. Articular cartilage is present between different joints. Thyroid, arytenoid, cricoid, these cartilages are present in the neck region of the human body. Trachea is the windpipe. Parts of nasal septum. Nasal septum is the division between two different nostrils of the nose. Lateral wall of the nose and epiphyseal plates. Epiphyseal plate is the demarcation from where the long bone is growing. We'll see it in bone too. Fibrocartilage is whitish in color and it is present on symphysis pubis, the tailbone, joint cavity discs, glenoid labrum, acetabular labrum. Glenoid labrum, acetabular labrum is related to the glenoid cavity where the femur attaches the hip, and acetabulum of the shoulder joint. Okay, elastic cartilage, it is elastic in nature. It can be bent, it can repair itself fully. Present in pinna of the ear, the outer part of the ear which we can touch, the medial part of the auditory tube, the epiglottis or Adam's apple, as you can see protruding from your neck for voice. Okay, corniculate and cuneiform cartilages. So these are different types of cartilages. These are the pictures given. This is elastic cartilage of the external ear. This is the hyaline cartilage, and this is fibrocartilage. Okay. So fibrocartilage is very hard as compared to the other two. Elastic cartilage is the softest. Okay, so that means all for today. Next time we're going to study bone and different types of blood, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to post this slide in the group. If you have any questions, please let me know. I know the lectures are getting boring by the day, but that's what medical education is like. Some topics are very interesting while the other topics are boring. These topics will also cover a part of your histology, so don't worry, just keep on revising these things, and inshallah when the hard topics come, it will get easier for you to understand those. Okay, take care. Allah Hafiz.